Hi. Um, so my education before GVSU, I went to public schools my whole life. Um, when I was around kindergarten through second or third grade, I went to a more rural school, and then in fourth grade, I transferred to um, definitely more urban school in Kalamazoo. It's kind of like medium urban to suburban. Um, yeah, it was just public school, not much to say about it. My public school, going to Kalamazoo school, I get this really awesome thing called Kalamazoo Promise. Hi, this is my cat. And with the Kalamazoo Promise, I get a certain amount of tuition paid for by donors who made that promise years ago. That I think has been the most helpful thing I've gotten from my high school experience when it comes to college. Other than that, it's kind of just like the typical amount of prep for college. We didn't have that much push for AP classes or anything. And then we just had we had guidance counselors help us if we needed it, but it wasn't very push that like, oh, we could go there if we needed help. What a couple things wish we could have learned more in school. One, more civics, law, politics, government classes. We had one that was required. We also had an economics class that was required. I think those were both helpful, but I feel like learning even more, especially about how our current government works, would have been even more beneficial. Another thing that I just think should be taught in schools is driver's ed. In this day and age, having a license is so important and beneficial for a million different reasons. And even if you don't have a car, it is still helpful to have. And everyone, I think, should have access to learning that. So I think if they install that as a class in high school, then more kids would have access to it to be able to get their license. Three big issues in our American education system. I'd say lack of equality. So that's like, for instance, redlining, how some schools were just pushed to be, like more, like just how they're segregated basically. Like we talked about it in class. I can't explain it right now for some reason. And that leads to my second reason, which is funding disparity. So some schools get more funding from the government and certain grants, and some schools are kind of left behind and have to use old materials, use books, just have less funding in general. And then also students falling behind or not being pushed enough, depending on their level. There are so many different, everyone learns differently, and everyone has different skills and different subjects that they pick up faster, and it is very possible that students are falling behind. And then the opinion for what role the government should play in school, I think funding is very important. And I know the government doesn't fund schools completely, but the government also contributes to student aid, or financial aid, which is very important to most college students. Like even with the Kalamazoo Promise, I'm still on financial aid and I still have loans taken out, and that is so important to so many students. So I think that's one of the best ways the government is involved in schooling.